Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. Well, it's lovely to be back with you again. First thing, I should make a correction. I think somehow in my little biographical note, I wasn't at Anandagiri with Ajahn for 9 years. It was more like, I think it was 6, because I think I was in Thailand for 7 in total. So just to make that correction. So we're opened up again. I guess this is what you call spring in Canada so far. Seems to be cloudy most of the time here. So when we do see the sun, it's like a little celebratory moment. But the geese are back, and that's all to the good. I'm looking out over the forest right now, and it's kind of gray and that kind of dun color that reminds me of the deer that come to my kuti, because they're very much that color too. You can't really see them much. It's nice to see people coming back to the monastery. Generally, people were staying away over the winter retreat. We had, as you probably know, a very set number of guests, long-term guests here over the winter retreat, which is very harmonious time, lovely group of people. But it's good to see people coming back and enjoying their ability to come back. One of the pleasures of being in a monastery, I think, is just seeing and hearing from people what it is that a monastery brings to their life. I mean, you kind of forget about this sometimes, but people will come and maybe they've never been to a monastery before, and they just they walk around and they take a few deep breaths, and they feel peaceful. And there's something very welcoming in the place, and they seem to, quite often they will respond to how they've resonated with the silence. They found a peace in their heart that they maybe hadn't experienced for some time, or which is unusual to them. So this is one of those silent gifts of a monastery, which I'm grateful to be part of, and I always enjoy hearing these reflections of people who are coming to the place. It gives some voice to the fact of a teaching that I remember hearing often when I was in Thailand. Ajahn, for instance, who just had his birthday, and there was a retreat that went on for some time, and I think 1 or 2 of you might have been there. He would talk about the monastery of the heart, because people who are coming back to the monastery right now, they're thinking, oh, it's, I'm so grateful to, have access to Tisarana again, and they're out of their winter retreat, and isn't that a lovely thing? And it is. What Ajahn was referring to here was how it is that through our practice, we cultivate, in fact, this space, this access to silence in our own heart. And therefore, over time, and it does usually take time for people, but over time, people are able to begin to call forth in their own lives, living wherever you do, in your apartment or your home, with your family or on your own, or whatever it is, you're able to call up in those circumstances what he would call the monastery of the heart, meaning this silent place, this place of mindfulness, of this heart space, however you like to term it. Anyway, it's a lovely notion, and it's something I like to reflect on, because for me, it has to do with restoring in the midst of whatever I'm doing, restoring in the midst of my day, that sense of mindfulness, the capacity to be present to what it is I'm doing, what it is I'm experiencing, to observe the mind state, observe the mood, observe the not just the content of my experience, but the quality, the tenor, the coloration of it. And this is something, it takes practice. It certainly does for me, but it's very much worth doing because it brings to mind again. Even though I live in a monastery, it brings me back to the monastery of the heart, and to the words of my great teacher in Thailand. So how do you do that? And what is it that can restore that? Well, sometimes for people who have done retreats over the years, or who maybe do come to the monastery often, or who have a regular practice of sitting and reading suttas maybe, or listening to Dhamma talks on the web, on YouTube, or however it is. I mean, perhaps we find that this is sufficient. This is a useful way to restore this quality of mindfulness, of clarity, of a kind of silent witnessing in our experience. Another thing that I reflect on too is has to do with what I call, say, the texture of the everyday, or because most of our lives, for most of us at least, for most of our lives, are engaged in routines of one form or another. Of course, I don't know about any of your lives, but and you all likely live different lives even from one another. But typically, it will involve spending time in traffic, sitting in your car, maybe sitting in the bus, trying to make it through a meeting, washing dishes, organizing your laundry, speaking to a teller in a grocery store, chatting with a friend on the phone, waving to a neighbor, watching people pass in the street, taking your dog on a walk. Looking at the tree in your front lawn to see whether it's going to start producing leaves again yet. These are just the everyday experiences that we have, and of course, speaking to our partners, speaking to our children, calling forth the courage to say something to our partners or our children or our bosses or our employees or whomever. So thinking and speaking and doing, of course, are very much, these things constitute the life of the everyday. And if we're looking to establish or to revive this sense of the monastery of the heart on a regular basis, maybe thinking of doing it on a continual basis is too high a bar to jump to reach at this time. But thinking to establish it regularly through a day. Okay, so normally, perhaps if you think of yourself as a practitioner, well, perhaps hopefully there's a meditation in the morning or in the evening, at least once a day, and then maybe on the weekend you do a little bit more, or once a week you join with a group like this, and therefore cultivate meditation in a concerted way for this period of time. So there are events like this. But the everyday continues outside of these kind of rarefied circles of attention, don't they? So what is it that we can do? What is it that I would recommend that you consider doing in the other parts of the day? And this isn't about necessarily reminding yourself, oh, I'm a Buddhist practitioner. How should I practice here and there and in this or that circumstance? Isn't necessarily about that. To establish practices in life, it seems to me that to establish habits of life which are kind of viable, which have some fair degree of success built into them. I think it's helpful to start modestly. You might think, I'll recall an experience I had as a layman, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago or something. I had the opportunity to drive Venerable Piyadasi Mahatera. He was, if you're not so familiar with the Sri Lankan monastic community, he wrote many books, and he was basically a pioneer. So some of his books would have been among the first books available on Buddhism, in Theravada Buddhism, at least in Western culture. And I think when I saw him, he was on something like his 14th world tour. So he was kind of, you might call a missionary monk, deeply steeped in the suttas and basically living in a monastic circumstance, probably since he was a teenager as a novice or something like that. Anyway, I had an opportunity to see him several times in my life as a layman. Really lovely man. So I was driving him in Calgary once and to take him back to the place he was staying, and we were chatting, of course, and I was asking questions, and then at some point the conversation kind of dwindled down, and it was quiet for a few minutes, and I looked over at him at some point as I was driving, and you could see that he was mouthing something, he was saying something, and so later, when there was some opportunity to ask him, I said, Bhante, I saw it looked like you were saying something back there. And he said, oh, yes, I was just spreading loving kindness to the people who were passing on the street, walking on the sidewalk. And I've told this story before, but I remember thinking at the time, boy, what a great job to have. But of course, if it's built into one's character after decades and decades of quite strenuous, but certainly concerted and consistent and conscientious effort, these things do become habitual. And so for him, it was just he was just doing what he normally does. If I have a bit of spare time, I spread metta to people. Why not? What could be the harm in that? But this was part of the texture of his everyday, in other words, and again, that in a sense is a high standard, a very beautiful one, and definitely something to aspire to. But no doubt any of us here could succeed in doing that from time to time if we bring our mind to it. Okay, so that's just keep that in mind for the moment. But as I say, the days that we spend, and I'm imagining that the days that some of you spend, but sitting in traffic and all of that, washing dishes, but the days that we spend have a great deal of the everyday in them. Maybe it comprises by far the majority of the day. And that what the everyday is for you is going to vary somewhat, but probably won't vary tremendously from one another. Sitting, standing, walking, lying down, right? So what to do? Well, here's a suggestion. And as I say, to begin modestly, because if we begin modestly, however, with a level of determination, make a kind of resolution. Okay, I'm going to start this. I'm going to start this, and for the next week, I'm going to put this into practice, but just in a modest kind of way. What will I do? You can come up with your own response to that. But say you're a driver of a car, or you need to be driven in a car regularly. Okay, so twice a day I go somewhere in the car. Okay, there you go. So car is part of my experience. So make a determination. As you know, adhitthana is one of the 10 barami, the 10 perfections. Okay, so it's definitely something to work on. So make a determination to do something very, very simple, related to your everyday, that could, well, you can just see where it goes, where it leads you, what it brings into your life. And you're after all, you're the scientist in your own experience. You're the artist of your own life, trying to clarify and beautify the structure of experience. So make a little determination. As an example, every time I get in a car, and just before I turn the key on, I mean, it just takes a second, or before, whoever drives me, we start the car, and I buckle up the seatbelt, and then just before things get underway, I say to myself, okay, I'm about to go from here to there, and may this journey be safe. May all the beings I pass, may all the people and all the beings I pass on this particular journey to work or wherever be well, happy, and safe. May no harm come to myself or anyone. May those of us in this car remain safe and healthy. And may we arrive at our destination safely. And you can fill in whatever words that seem to fit. It could be a little prayer for the well-being, for the awakening everyone you pass. It could be any kind of prayerful set of words or meditative reflection that you want to make. But just every time you get in the car, about to set off, okay? And try that for a week. See what it does. See what it does. See and reflect. Okay, say you've been successful, more or less, 90% of the time you've been successful in that week. Then ask yourself, okay, what is the experience? Since I do drive, since my life does comprise of driving to some degree, and it probably will for the next X number of decades, what difference does it make? What difference did it make for me to do that? Insofar as I did for that last week, what difference did it make compared to other occasions of driving, being a passenger, driving the car? Did it change anything? Did it make me a little bit more attentive, more alert? Did it soften the experience a little bit? Did it mean that when I was stopped at a red light, even when I knew I was going to be a little bit late for whatever it was I was trying to get to, was my heart a little bit softer anyway? Was I as anxious as I sometimes become under those circumstances? Just ask yourself those kinds of questions. What difference does it make? So driving a car is just an example, but you can imagine bringing this kind of attention and making this kind of pause, bringing this mindful pause with its little prayer or this little meditation or this little direction to the mind and heart to restore mindfulness. You can do it anywhere, but I'm suggesting just as you're, unless you do this already, but let's say that this hadn't really occurred to you very much, or certainly not consistently in the past. You can do it while you're washing dishes. You can do it when you're walking to the bus. You can do it on any number of occasions, in all occasions actually. But the question I think to set out is, what difference does it make? What do I notice in my own experience? Because that's where it counts, isn't it? It isn't a matter of theory. It isn't a matter of checking a little list somewhere that someone has developed for you. It has to make a difference in your experience. So that's the kind of question that you can ask yourself. And especially when there's some reason for optimism, when you do notice a little bit of buoyancy, maybe for part of the day or for part of the duration of that particular everyday experience, it brings some buoyancy, it brings some uplift, some clarity. You notice that what happens afterwards oftentimes seems to be a little bit better, a little clearer. Yeah, after the driving to see my friend, we had a really good talk. Maybe they're related. Maybe the reason for the goodness of this talk was somehow related in how it is that you came to be there. So just an example. Because the Buddha said the Dhamma is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, beautiful in the end. This is a kind of reflection I never seem to tire of bringing myself back to. And I think we understand, sort of in terms of a life spent in Dhamma, we understand what coming to the Dhamma means and how that is a lovely kind of thing. We all of a sudden feel inspired. We feel that sense of uplift, that sense of possibility. How it clarifies things which maybe were unclear for us prior to encountering the Dhamma, encountering these formulations of the truth that the Buddha provided, and what great disciples of his have reiterated and clarified in their own ways in the generations since. So the Dhamma is certainly beautiful in the beginning, taking the end here to be enlightenment, or at least kind of important insights. Well, there's beauty in that too, isn't there? Obviously, insight is a beautiful thing. It isn't just a really good idea, after all. It's a kind of gestalt. It's a full-bodied experience through the heart, through the wisdom of the heart, of truth. So that's bound to be beautiful, isn't it? Whether or not we feel we've had that, it's we can imagine. Yeah, that would be lovely. And if you've been on a retreat and had a good retreat, or you sometimes have a good, you find yourself restored at the end of the day, and because you've been able to meditate or something like that, or maybe you reflect on how good it is to start your day with a period of meditation, something of that kind. Then in the middle, the Dhamma is beautiful as well. But what I'm suggesting is here, by reflecting on Dhamma, the Dhamma of the everyday, this is a little term, the monastery of the heart, the texture of the everyday. We're trying to find ways to insert mindfulness, clarity, beauty, however you like to term it. We're trying to find ways to restore or to bring this into the everyday, because after all, we're all interested in being happy in at times other than when we first come to Buddhism, or when we imagine we might one day have a transformative insight, and even other than times we're actually sitting in meditation or walking in meditation, or reading a sutta passage or something of this kind. We very much like to see the beauty of the everyday much more often, wouldn't we? Because this kind of experience as a human being is to begin to see life itself as this great privilege, where we're thrust in the face of what is, and we have this duty, this honor, though, of coming to see what is in some kind of transformative and truthful way, which changes life forever. So that's what we have available to us if we can. And so I'm going to just leave you with this idea then to find ways in your life to which are, as I've said many times now, which are just part of the everyday. Because when that car drive, or when sitting down for the next cup of tea or coffee, can be made into something a little bit different, when you can revive it, restore it, when you can bring something of your own attention, your own loving attention to that everyday experience, you will transform it, because it will cease being habitual anymore. It will, we no longer will gloss over it with minimal attention. When we do that, when things become habitual, we do this out of habit, so that we can think about the next thing while we're still doing the thing that we're doing, without really doing it, if you see what I mean. So this we feel makes us more efficient in life, and doesn't require our attention to do things that we've done 1,000 times. Well, why attend to that after all? Because it's just part of the everyday. I'm interested in what I'm worrying about. Yeah, that really interests me right now. Or what I'm attracted to, what I want more of right now, what I wish I had right now. That's what I'm interested in giving all my attention to while I'm actually washing the dishes. I mean, we don't actually give ourselves these forms of reasoning, but that's more or less what we're often doing. We're getting on to the next thing before we're there yet, or we're immersed in the last thing while we're actually on the next thing. We're still thinking about the argument we had, or what we should have done when we were there or here, and it all gets very mindless. It all gets very habitual and mindless. But I like to think of this word habit in somewhat different terms too, because what I'm suggesting is we can make wholesome, enlightening, you might say, habits out of the everyday by bringing attention to it, by bringing attention to the texture of things as they're lived. It becomes, in other words, maybe there's a better word for this, but we can, I think about habit in this way also. Yes, now every time I drive to work, or go to pick up the kids at school, or get in my car, basically, I just stop for, what does it take? 5 seconds. You know, this isn't a major part of the day, but they're 5 very beautiful, they're transformative seconds. They're remarkable. This is a remarkable time when I'm being present and reminding myself what I'm doing. Plus, I'm bringing some wholesome, loving attention to what it is that I hope to achieve here, just in a very general term. May all the people I see on the road be well. May all the dogs and cats, may they be safe and well fed and well watered. And may the trees continue to be nourished and nourish us with their presence. And whatever you like to say, and whatever you like to bring to the heart. But if you do this regularly, we can, I think it's fair to say, it can become a form of habit. Or, it becomes part of our practice. It becomes ingrained into the structure of our practice. It becomes natural. Maybe this is a better word then. It becomes natural for us to think in these terms. And then, when the car driving cars, that's a good time to be mindful after all. So when driving cars takes on this kind of character, it's going to encourage us. Oh, look at how that works. Well, what else do I do? It's okay, normal. I wash the dishes, or I take the dog to the park. Okay, there are other things of this kind, and then perhaps there are denser kinds of occasions. it's time I talk to my husband, my wife, about something that I think that we're not doing as well as we could. And I'm not exactly sure how to initiate that conversation. But maybe there are conversations. Before you engage in any kind of conversation, maybe just start it out simple. I'll be seeing my friend for tea. May I be mindful and clear and alert, and may I bring my loving attention to this conversation. And may I, and I resolve to be honest and clear and kindly in my speech, saying things which are timely and which have some good purpose, aren't just frivolous and spending time, filling time. So, we after all speak with people quite regularly, don't we? It's part of being human. We have a way with us. We like to chat about this and that. Insofar as we sometimes do that, we know we're going to engage in that because we're seeing a friend for tea. Just spend those 2 minutes again, and make a kind of resolution. Make a very one of those beautiful, gentle determinations. May I remember in this conversation to come to say what is useful and kindly. To respond as wisely as I can, as kindly as I can, say things which have some purpose, and even if the purpose is just to bring a little levity to his or her sadness or something of that kind. So we can bring these little determinations to any element of our life, really. It'd be really quite tricky. First moment when I wake up in the morning, I hear the alarm. As soon as I can, I acknowledge this is another day. May I be well, happy, and peaceful. May every person, every being I encounter during this day be well, happy, and peaceful. See if you can do that. Everybody wakes up in the morning, right? It's nothing new. You've all done it. Try that. Put your head in the pillow at night. I've had my day. Whatever things I could have done better, I accept these things and accept myself for just making errors of judgment. I said maybe the wrong thing there. May everyone that I saw today be well, happy, and peaceful. And now I'm about to go to sleep. May my sleep be restful, and may I wake with a joyful and clear mind. So these are just suggestions. You will have your own creative ways to bring to any of these things. Start with maybe 1 or 2 categories of experience in your day, and just try it for a week. Reflect if it's made any difference and what that difference has been, and find whatever encouragement you can, and make it into a kind of creative project for yourself. Because in doing so, you will be establishing this monastery of the heart. The monastery will maybe even mean more to you when you encounter it, wherever you encounter this mythical monastery of the heart. But it's because you will have been cultivating the stillness, the silence, the beauty of goodness, truth, and beauty in life. So I'll leave these reflections, this rambling reflection for you, with my best wishes.
Andamayam Dhamma Kathaya Sadhu Karam Dadamase. Sadhu, 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 anumodami. Thank you, Ajahn, for this wonderful teaching and lesson. I'm already thinking of different things that I can do. where I can set these intention. We now have some time for questions. So if anyone has a question, please type it in the chat and I will pose it. No one has a question? I'm sure Prajan would love this extra time, but feel free. Inga, I see that you're raising your hand. Would you go ahead? Inga, you're muted.
Okay. Ajahn, good morning and thank you.
You're welcome.
Ajahn, possibly because I am a Holocaust survivor, but I'm finding it extremely difficult to live day by day, and which I'm doing, and I'm using my practice. I would be lost without